with the engine and transmission in the car, trans tunnel's made, engine mount, trans mount is made, all the radiator, the fuel cell, basically everything that operates the car has been located. So now it's time to build out a wiring harness, and for that we have our friend Dustin over at ANX Electrical Company from Atlanta, Georgia. He flew out, and he's going to be building our harness and handling some of our electronics this year. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell us about your company and your background and what you got in store.
Like you said, my name's Dustin. The company's called ANX Electric, based in Atlanta. Been doing wiring for race cars for about 10 years now. Started with road race cars. So I do a lot of cars in like IMSA, WeatherTech series, and SRO series. And now the last 4 or 5 years I've been doing some FD cars as well. So taking a lot of the experience from my past in the road race stuff with cars that have ABS and paddle shift and a lot of really complex systems, and using it to try and increase the reliability for the demands of drift cars, which are more powerful and more abused generally. So it's so far it's been pretty successful. I haven't had an electrical failure on any FD car that I've done yet. So
whose cars have you worked on?
I've done Dustin Miles' Pro 2 car was my first one, and then the second one I did was Kazuya Taguchi's S chassis, and then now we're doing another car for Kazuya this year as well, while at the same time as doing yours. They've run 2 to 3 seasons now with no issues.
With no issues?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. This is my power supply that I dropped when I got here, so the cover's coming off. This is a DC power supply that's 110 volts out of my workshop. We got like 3 of these of different precision levels and voltage levels and current ratings. But I brought this one out here because it has the highest current rating, so I can plug in everything from your car, from your power steering pump, fans, lights, all of that. I can actually power it on a bench, see how many amps it draws to gauge the size of the wire that I need to get to run to.
Can we see it work?
Yeah, sure. So this pump is currently going to draw way less amperage than it should because there's no fluid going through it. But if you take it, you just put it in here. And you can see how many, right now it's only drawing 9 amps, it's dropping to 8, 7, but when you have fluid in it, it's going to start drawing a bunch of current. So this thing's also, the reason we had this here is because some of these pumps, like the 911 one that people use, you have to have an external feed wire to turn it on, so this just verifies that yes, when you feed power and ground to it, it turns on, there's no signal that has to kick it on. So, I believe this is an MR2 pump, right?
It is, SW20. It's the best one ever made.
MR not.
It's the best one ever made. You're just a hater. That's a lot of power.
I like the electric over hydraulic ones, and I also like the pure electric ones, but I don't think the pure electric ones would do a good job in drifting.
Yeah.
You don't get the return, so
yeah.
You're kind of...
And that is a proven fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people that have ran that from like factory cars, they have an issue. Like the Mustangs have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Very expensive lessons to learn.
Stuff like that, and then like, you know, I can see how much current these fans are actually going to draw, and I can actually like back pressure them, so I can lay them flat on the table so they have no way of pulling air, because generally fans draw more current if they have no way of getting air through. So we just figure out the maximum amount of current that we're going to achieve, even though our Nexus will be able to, you know, shut things down on overcurrents. It's better to know beforehand when you get into it. Can't really design a wiring harness without knowing how much current everything draws. If you do, you're foolish.
Well, I appreciate you being so thorough. It really adds another level of legitimacy to our program. You know, I know that Kazuya's car is always running really good. Yeah. You know, and so is Dustin's. They've never had electrical issues that I've seen. So those guys always throw down. Yeah,
we do. We just did checks on Kazuya's looms because every 2 years I try to bring them back and do all the testing that I did when I worked at the Space Center with the rocket wiring stuff. And we had, aside from one boot that got cut.
So rockets, what do you mean? You wire up rockets?
Yeah, I used to work at ULA wiring rockets and rocket, what I call them rocket holders, but basically when they build a rocket, they build it in a hangar vertically, and there's a base that holds it, and I used to wire those as well as doing like the umbilical cords that go to rockets and things like that.
So like rockets that would like go to the moon?
Not the moon, no, but definitely into low Earth orbit.
Wow.
I'm not old enough to wear a rocket that goes to the moon yet. If I had gotten a job at SpaceX, I might have been able to pull it off. Blue Origin. But I decided to go back to motorsports. It was more the travel and the experiences and the passion were more exciting to me.
Yeah, I could see that would be probably pretty serious.
Yeah, it's very serious.
Yeah, I could imagine.
There's no
Not that motorsports isn't, but like when you're dealing with ballistic stuff like that.
In motorsports, you're dealing with like car builders and maybe a handful of engineers that are working on it. And the aerospace side of things, it was an entire company basically of engineers that everything was bureaucracy and had to go through these long processes and times, and it could get pretty frustrating.
I could imagine. Motorsports is fun, no matter what.
Motorsports is fun. It's stressful, but it's fun.
It's a good stress. We were talking about that last night. It's a good stress.
Yeah.
It's how we get things done.
Every job has pros and cons, including motorsports.
Right.
If every race was in my hometown, that'd be the biggest pro motorsports for me.
Yeah.
Must come out of my toolbox. So, obviously, it looks like a brake booster used to live here. We're going to cut this out, and I will CNC out I'll get some plates CNC'd out that'll fit your connections here. You'll have an engine harness connection here. You'll have a power harness connection here and a battery cable here for your starter and alternator. Those will be auto sport connectors. We'll start with the power one. The power one's going to come down to here. There's going to be a split here, and then you'll have 3 leads that come up here and run across with the engine harness, and then go over to the wiper motor and what will be the master switch, as well as going down to the underglow lighting for the left side. And then back over here, this will come down and run out of here. You can see that we've marked where we're going to put grounds on the car, so those are going to be welded on M8. Welded on cylindrical, like half-inch or inch, probably inch pieces of steel with M8 threads through them, so that we know we have good ground. So this one will be the power harness, and then it'll also run over to the engine. It'll come up from here, split again here. There'll be one for the oil cooler fan, and then you'll have one for auxiliary lighting, one for an electric water pump, and then you'll come up here, split again, this headlight, and then it'll run across to that headlight, and then we'll re-terminate all this OEM wiring that's pretty old and is beaten. Hopefully never see one of those again. Those are my worst nightmare. So then on the engine harness side, it'll come out of here, run across to about here, and then it will 90 out and start going out to all this. So you'll have your EGT box on the wall, firewall, I assume, and things like boost solenoids, stuff like that. But then everything for the engine will run down this intake cam's side of the valve cover, so that we can get to all the injectors. We'll go across over for the coils. We may do a second lead for the coils. I haven't decided yet.
Okay.
But basically everything will be modular. So like if you decide you want to change engines, theoretically you can take this engine out and put in a VR38 or whatever, and all we'd have to do is build a new engine loom. All the stuff inside the cabin would still be capable of running that engine. So in the long run, it ends up saving you a lot of money if you do modular.
Well, you get what you pay for. It's all about the quality and the long-term use. I mean, same thing with the transmissions that we run. Everything can be used for one thing or the other.
Yeah. So on the inside, your ECU or your Nexus, I don't know if I call it ECU or not because it does everything, right?
Right.
So your controller will mount here, and then these wires will come up through here and go across, and then you can see I've already marked out where that bulkhead's going to live. So you'll have the connections here for the bulkhead, and then you'll have another lead that comes across all the way to here, and there'll be some other ones, and then we'll put a switch panel right here. Okay. And that switch panel is kind of like the center core of the electrical system. So any harness needs to connect to another harness, or any signal that needs to go from the engine to the power harness or to the dash or whatever it is, that transfer will happen inside that panel, so it's in a protected area, and you don't have a bunch of connectors just laying all over and underneath the dash, which is one of the biggest things we see that is very frustrating when you're trying to fix problems or solve problems or trying to integrate new things, is you have all these different connections under the dash that may or may not have been documented by whoever made it originally. So if you just take all that and modulate it into a panel, which also has driver controls, like your CAN keypad will live in there, your master switch, your map position switches, you don't have TC, boost switches, and then from there everything will come out and go to where it's going to go. And then we're also going to help you out with this too. I found this boost switch. So I'm going to put an auto sport bulkhead right here. So basically there'll be a sub loom that goes inside of here. It'll go to your gear position switch, your strain gauge, and it'll also do this for you. So this guy will, instead of having all this stuff just shoved through here where it can get cut, I can't even get it out right now, but that'll just connect to the harness here, and then that same harness will be going through here.
Nice.
And you'll just have, so when the guys have to drop the transmission
Well,
in a hurry.
as you can see, we already had an issue.
With it. It happens.
Yeah.
No, one of the funny things that when people come to my shop, they always ask me about electrical tape. I don't have any electrical tape in my entire shop. I've never used it on a harness ever, and I hate seeing it. And it really frustrates me when I have to take apart like an OE harness, and it's got that gooey crap all over it.
It's the worst.
Yeah,
it's the worst black tape ever.
It's terrible because, number one, it doesn't make a good seal. Number two, when you pull it off, it leaves an adhesive. Adhesive attracts dirt. Dirt gets in between wires. Wires rub together. Then you have a really bad time.
Right.
So try to avoid it at all costs, and that's why you will never see it in my house. Even when I drop like power from my welders at the shop, no electrical tape. We heat shrink everything. I might be a little anal.
That's just It's just quality craftsmanship, man. I like the way you work. I like your style.
Like in your rear power harness, we talked about the bulkheads on the front. We're going to do a sub loom here, like the gearbox. Since these guys, we don't really want to like pass them through any of this metal, because then you have a point where it can rub and be caused damage while you're running. So we'll basically take both of these guys, we'll put two connectors here that go to a sub loom that'll go to a bulkhead connector here. So
what's a bulkhead connector?
Yeah, I keep talking about this. I'll probably show you one. So let's see if I have. I only carry, in my toolbox, I only carry like spare stuff for my, especially with my road race support. I always have to change things. So. But this would be an example of one. This is a little smaller than what we'd use for that. This is an ASL.
Let me see if I get it to focus. There we go.
But it's basically, it has the two flange points, and then there's, I don't think I have one now, but there's a nut plate that goes on the backside. So you run two M2.5 nuts through here, and it holds it in place. And then it gives you a disconnect point, right? So like, if it was the same shell size, this would be the opposite side. This is not the correct mating connector, but it would be the mate for it. So when you have to service it, like if you got to take that thing off, instead of disconnecting a bunch of shit, you just turn that, pull it off, and carry on.
Dope.
And then while it's disconnected, you got these caps you can use. So like, say you're servicing your gearbox, when you pull that gearbox sub loom, you can just take this guy, put it on there, and there's no damage.
All right, so with Dustin coming in and mapping out the harness that he's going to make, he headed back to Atlanta and he's going to build everything out there. We're going to finalize fabrication over the next 2 days, get the car over to powder coat, and we're going to do everything that we can to get the car together as much as possible, because Dustin wants us to bring it out to Atlanta for him to finally install the harness. So it's kind of a push up in our time frame. What we were expecting. We're expecting to have the car finalized out here, and we tune it and possibly, try to get a test in before we leave. But that's how this stuff goes. So got a nice care package today from Power Stop. Got brakes for virtually everything. I love working with Power Stop. They make brake pads and brake rotors and brake kits for virtually every single car that's on the market today. So for any of you guys that are looking to upgrade your brakes, definitely look at Power Stop for your braking solution for your next brake job. We have brakes here for the F450. This is actually, yes. So, sorry, that's for the F350. This is for the 450. I mean, you could see the difference in diameter. So a lot of people are always thinking like, oh, what's the difference between F350 and F450? What's worth the investment? It's a big difference. So if you want the ultimate towing machine, F450, 100%. F350 still does great. Still able to pull my 44-foot goose around the country fully loaded, but the 450 just does a better job. But everything is getting upgraded with their cross-drilled and slotted rotors, their Z36 Extreme tow package brake pads, which these things are great, guys. As you saw in the Chicago video, virtually no brake dust, especially under a heavy load. No squealing, no funny business. Just solid, good stuff. So we have the Extreme package over here. Got some track day pads for the 15 and the 14. Even got a full brake setup for the vert, for the street car. So these guys take just the best care of us. So much love to Power Stop.